one of the scariest times in a prisoner's life is the night before they get released from prison, and actually the day that they're released from prison. Because they're going back into the world where they are going to be judged, where their opportunities are reduced, and they might be going out to no support network. People might have forgotten about them. And I want to tell you a story about a guy called Bobby. Bobby's not his real name, but he's a prisoner that I worked with when I was a chaplain a few years ago. And Bobby was abandoned by his parents at quite a young age. And despite his best efforts, he would try and keep away from the wrong crowd, but he couldn't. And he kept finding himself in trouble. And that spiraled into using drugs and breaking the law. Before long, Bobby found himself in prison. And by the time I spoke, and he had developed quite a deep-rooted heroin addiction as well. By the time I met Bobby, he told me that he'd been out of prison for 12 months in the last 10 years. 12 months outside of prison in 10 years. That's crazy, isn't it? And that's all because he entered this spiral that he couldn't get out of at all. Every time he left prison, he didn't have a family to go to. So he went to the only people that he knew, and they were his drug dealers. And when you get released from prison, you're given a discharge grant of about £48. That's to see you through to your next benefit. That's to see you through to your next paycheck, which could be a week or even longer away. And drug dealers aren't daft. They're clever people. They know when prisoners are released from jail. They know the time of day. And before the building up to Bobby's next release date, when I was working with him, Bobby got his £48 on the morning of his release. He left the jail and he was met by drug dealers leaving the driveway of the prison. He had scored his first deal before he left the prison property. He went and he injected. A few weeks later, he was back inside. I went to see him and I spent even more time with him. Coming up to his next release, I tried to get him a bed in Bethel, which is a Christian drugs rehab program. We got him a bed, he got a place, he was all set to go. On the day of his release, he arrived at the gate. He walked through, I met him on the other side of the gate, and he did a runner, because he didn't know how to cope. He didn't know how to live his life without using drugs. So he ran away, and again, before he hit the end of the driveway, he had scored drugs again. And he kept coming back, and he kept coming back. And you know, it's not right that we have got men and women in this country who feel that the only option they've got is to go and use drugs, that they haven't got anybody else that they can go to. And like I say, living in the community as an ex-offender is an extremely difficult thing to do. You are labelled, your opportunities are reduced, you have next to no chance at all. And as a church and as Christians, we need to be speaking into this and we need to be doing something about it. And one of the things we need to do is we need to raise the awareness of the different issues that are going on for prisoners when they're released. And so we're going to launch an awareness campaign to try and build that awareness and try and help people understand the different challenges that prisoners face. And we're going to do this thing called Prisoner Shoes in the next couple of months. And so what we're asking for is asking for volunteers to sign up to this. And what's going to happen is you're going to come up to the West Midlands, and in the morning you're going to be given £48, the same amount of money that prisoners are given on their release. You're going to be taken to a prison. Before we leave you, you're going to be stripped of your wallet, of your mobile phone, of anything else that can give you any help. And you're going to make your way to different checkpoints throughout the day, in the same way that a prisoner being released from prison would do. You'd have a mock probation appointment. You'd have a mock job centre appointment. And if you're late, you'll be fined, and some of that money will be taken away from you. Then, depending on how much money you've got left at the end of that night, or at the end of that day, will very much depend on what type of sleep you have. You'll either have a camp bed, or you'll have a cardboard box in the storeroom of our offices in Hales Owen. And we're doing this to raise awareness, to help us understand a little bit more about the challenges that prisoners face. And we're after volunteers. And to help us take part in this. We're not going to get a very clear picture because we're not facing the same situations that they are, but it will help us, and it will help raise awareness for you to go back to your communities and your churches to talk about the challenges that prisoners face. So if you're interested, I want you to go to www.yfc.co.uk/prisoner shoes and sign up. At this stage, we're just asking for interest. We're not asking for definite volunteers. It's just people who are interested in taking part. So please go to that website. Thank you very much.